I'm sorry for the delay, but it was a technical delay. Good evening to all members, officers of the council, and any members of the public or press who may be watching on YouTube. Do I have any apologies for absence?
I haven't received any apologies for absence, Chairman.
Members, are there any further apologies? I call upon the Strategic Director, Internal Services, to make any general declarations of interest on behalf of members and officers present.
I wish to make declarations in respect of Agenda Item 6, Revenue and Capital Budgets 21-22, on behalf of all officers and members present in accordance with the circulated list.
Thank you. Does any member wish to make any amendments, deletions or additions to the list of declarations previously circulated? No. Do members agree that the list is accepted as the declarations made for this meeting?
Agreed, Mr. Mayor.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I'll take that as done then. If any member wishes to raise an issue in which any member has declared a disclosury pecuniary interest or a presidential interest, the relevant items on the agenda will be dealt with separately towards the end of the meeting. At those points, those members who have declared interest will be asked to leave the meeting during the considerations of the relevant item. I call upon the Leader of the Council to move that the minutes of the meeting of the General Assembly of the Council held on the 1st of February 2021 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to so confirm.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Members, is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Right, Mayor's announcements. Well, I have only a couple of items I wish to cover. Firstly, myself and the Deputy Mayor and the committee managed to send to the Eleanor, all of us, £7,428, which I think is really good for them. And I'd like to show my appreciation for the members of the committee that allowed that to happen. Second is something a bit sadder, that we had a previous mayor, Bertie Bassam, his wife passed away the other week and was buried last Thursday. So my condolences to their family. That's the end of my announcement. There are no urgent items for consideration. Well, it's a bit of a mouthful here, so bear with me. Members, I would like to remind you that the normal rules of debate apply to speeches on the budget. This includes the 5-minute time limit for the mover of the budget proposals, with all other speeches being limited to 3 minutes. Now, we will make them 3 minutes. I will be signalled by Alan Twyman, and it will just be 3 minutes. So if you could go along with that, I will be grateful. It is also a legal requirement that all decisions taken by the council budget meeting are by way of a recorded vote, and this will apply to voting on any amendments as well as the final budget proposals. Any amendments that have been submitted in advance of this meeting will be displayed on the screen as they are being moved, and will also be displayed when members are asked to vote. I call upon Councillor Kite to introduce the report. Councillor Kite.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. First, a word about Bertie Bassam and Sylvie and the loss of Sylvie. I know them both very well. It's such a shame at the moment we can't pay proper tribute to our colleagues, but when we get back together again, I assure you we will. But my condolences also go to the family. And can I also say a very warm welcome to those members who've been ill during this period. Like everyone in society, we've had our share of people and colleagues and friends who've been affected by COVID and other illnesses. And I'm delighted to see those who've recovered here tonight. And I'm also delighted to send my best wishes to every family who is connected with the council who is under stress at the moment from COVID. Mr. Mayor, in previous years, budget speeches have included a word or two about how challenging the year has been. I think all of us will have to think very, very carefully in the future about using such a phrase again, because this past year has set a new and awful threshold in terms of the challenge and tragedy faced by our country and our council. First, I must pay tribute to Graham Harris, who we've lost since our last meeting. It's simply impossible to overstate the impact that Graham had on this council and the way in which his professionalism and his very astute financial handling put this council into such a great position. We all miss Graham terribly. And again, when we have an opportunity to mark his passing properly and come together to do so, we will absolutely do so. I also need to thank finance officers, particularly Sarah Martin and her team led by Tim Sams. And thanks also to my own group colleagues, particularly Andy Lloyd and Chris Shipham, who have put an amazing amount of work into this budget this year. And I'm also able to offer thanks to the leader of the opposition groups, who for the first time I can remember were invited to join us at an early formative stage of the budget to influence the outcome of our work. One of the first changes I felt right in preparing our budget during a national crisis. Thanks to all the wonderful members of DBC staff who have not only been working during this terrible period, but also have adapted to some extraordinarily new working pressures and methods, and in many cases taken on new challenges to meet the needs that this community has during the pandemic. I don't think anyone who is not inside the Civic Centre or working for the council in those stressful days of last spring and summer can possibly realise the pressures that everyone was under, knowing that people out there in our community needed us for the most essential support and care. I also want to reserve some very special words of thanks for all of the council contractors, suppliers and partners who kept on working during this pandemic and were an essential part of supporting the community. It would be wrong for me to single out any one of those contractors for special praise, but let me, by way of example only, talk about the curbside waste collections and cleansing work completed by our partners at Abasa. These men and women continue to service the borough, often at great risk to themselves, and in doing so not only provided a basic service, but went on to deliver historically high records of accuracy and collection, a quite extraordinary achievement. It may be, Mr. Mayor, that some people, perhaps even some within this council, see them as fair game for criticism, but I think that the vast majority of local people are hugely appreciative and recognise the truth that our waste collection staff are amongst the hidden heroes of this pandemic. Alongside bus drivers and delivery drivers, shop staff, teachers and emergency service and many, many others who kept Britain running. But Mr. Mayor, it would be wrong of me not to focus immediately on the very special thanks that we deserve, that are deserved by the healthcare, the nursing, the pharmacy, the scientific and the whole medical community who have been at the front line of this pandemic. Our debt to them can never be fully repaid, but this council will make efforts to recognise them and all our COVID heroes. Mr. Mayor, in terms of timing of this debate, and I'm about to move on to the substantial part, I completely understand the ruling about 5 minutes and 3 minutes. I should take slightly longer than 5 minutes, and I think we achieve that by way of a standing order which requires members to vote upon extra time being given, and I think my group will do that. In return, I think it's only fair that we do the same for Councillor Gosign. So when we get to that point, I will ask my group to vote and support for the same motion. I will, in terms of the COVID pandemic, Mr. Mayor, make announcements about a formal awards programme in due course, but I'm delighted to confirm this evening that the Council will create a garden of commemoration in the town centre to honour not just those who were lost to this pandemic, but to mark the extraordinary achievement of everyone helped to tackle it. A further small gesture will see the 2021 floral bed in Central Park dedicated to our healthcare and key workers. More substantially, Mr. Mayor, I'm also very pleased this evening to confirm that the Borough Council is to sponsor the training of 2 new student doctors at the Kent Medical School as they embark upon their careers of public service. The Council will support 2 medical students from the Dartford area, and we have asked that priority be given to 2 trainees who are the first in their families to take such a university-level path. Mr. Mayor, as this crisis unfolded last spring, I took a decision to invite fully cross-party working to tackle this unprecedented challenge. I want to pay tribute to the Leader of the Opposition and Councillor Butterfield for working with us when we needed their help and support most. I like to think we learned a lot about each other during those days, and it may well be that we can go on, not just to receive briefings together and make decisions together as we did, but actually build a new future within the Council of working together. Hopefully, yes, sir. Have we reached our 5 minutes?
You have. And
okay. May I ask members of our group then to give their formal approval for more time to be added?
Agreed.
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 I'll see that
Agreed.
Councillor Gosign gets the same time.
Well, it gets some time, eh?
Oh, at the same time.
Of course, absolutely fine. Let's be charitable. Absolutely fine. This isn't a particularly long speech. It is longer than 5 minutes, but it's not particularly long compared to the previous ones. I thank those two colleagues for their help and support when we needed them most. Hopefully, the trust and the relationship we built at that time can be projected into the future. And if anyone out there prefers to see a more partisan and political council, I hope we can show them to be wrong. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I wish to thank the people of this borough who have shown extraordinary courage and compassion during this last year. If I were to explore the many thousands of small acts of kindness shown by local people to their neighbours and community, we would be here several days. Having given a commitment to my colleagues that this budget meeting will not last several days, I will therefore offer my simple thanks to every Dartford resident and move on to the main business of this evening. Mr. Mayor, Zoom and team meetings are a new feature of our lives, and I feel that they, even once our country has fully recovered from these dreadful days, they will probably continue to play some part in our lives. However, I'm sure I'm not alone in finding them not conducive to long speeches, so with your permission, I will make assumptions that every member has read the budget book this year and will highlight only salient features. This year, Mr. Mayor, the Borough Council proposes to be one of the few councils in the UK to bring forward a council tax freeze. It is true that only around 10% of the total bill relates to Dartford Borough Council, and that other local authorities and agencies have an impact on them too. But this is no reason for us to blindly follow suit. This council has an extraordinary record of freezing council tax when others around us are raising theirs, and we make no apologies for doing so. I'm also pleased to note that KCC, while facing significant service pressures and resource demands in areas of huge importance, like youth services, social care, and the provision of support for the elderly and the vulnerable, has found space within its budget to provide a significant support package for thousands of families to help them meet the challenge of rising bills. I hope that this measure from the County Council, combined with our freeze of local council tax, will be useful and appreciated by local families who have been through the most challenging and difficult few months. On top of the council tax freeze, we are making no reductions to core services. Indeed, we are expanding them in a number of key areas, particularly in the fields of public spaces, environmental improvements and green initiatives. On staff pay, we are making a fair 1% pay award commensurate with the current inflation rates of between 0.75 and 0.9% of CPI. I'm going to go through a whole range of areas I said where it was salient for us to mention them, and I'm going to start with public spaces. I'm particularly pleased to confirm that the council's extensive playground and public spaces refurbishment programme, that for very good reason could not move ahead during the pandemic year, is now restarting with enormous energy. The aim of this programme is to give the children, the parents and the carers of Dartford wonderful play experiences and places of high quality in which to have fun, to learn and to explore. One of the key priorities for this work is to ensure that play opportunities can be enjoyed by children regardless of disability or particular needs. I'm pleased to confirm that early priorities include a refurbishment of play equipment in Hesketh Park and the opening of negotiations with landowners at the bridge to provide new play opportunities there. They also provide a commitment to the community of the Fleet Estate to develop a fine new natural play space at Queen's Gardens. I'm particularly excited by this last project, Mr. Mayor, because I believe it could be one of the essential catalysts to drive forward our ambition for a family-friendly fleet down and create a pattern of community-led but council-funded initiatives that can be rolled out across the borough. Work with that fleet down community can start without delay. On events, Mr. Mayor, during this year, it's been important to put into perspective what really matters. And that, of course, has been the health and the safety of our local population. Events and gatherings have quite rightly been suspended during this period, and I regret to say that even though normal life is projected to return in the summer, it has not been possible for us to commit to a Dartford Festival again this year. What I will say is that the power of community events and gatherings is completely recognised by us at the council, and as soon as we can restore so many of the wonderful events we offer, such as the cinema nights, the outdoor theatre, the Festival of Lights, St George's Day and the new Children's Book Festival, I promise we will do so. We will take every opportunity to reintroduce events later this summer where it is safe and responsible to do so. I also agree with those who have written to me and spoken to me who say that the town should come together for a community recognition of both the heartbreak, the resilience and the positive community spirit that has been the character of the last 12 months. And the Borough Council will undertake to hold such an event as soon as it is possible to do so. On Planet Dartford and the environmental initiatives, the launch of the environmental scheme Planet Dartford was one of the first to be impacted by the arrival of the pandemic last spring. I'm pleased now, though, to confirm that the first important schemes under the initiative are now underway, with the establishment of 2 community orchards, one at Hesketh Park and one at Alamein Gardens. Like so many things we do, Mr. Mayor, I hope these will inspire more and more similar deliveries across the borough. Our green grants will continue to be available for any organisation or community who wants to help us on that journey towards net zero. We have an amazing team of officers and particularly councillors, actually, who again working cross-party, and I know Sue Butterfield is intensely passionate about these issues. Working together, we have put together an agenda of green initiatives, which I think we can be proud of. I'm also pleased to announce that the council will invest heavily in improvements to local properties, both in the private and the public sector, to improve energy efficiency and reduce carbon consumption. Money is also being provided for a range of deep cleans, litter reduction initiatives, and a further assault on the scourge of fly tipping. I shall bring forward details of these schemes in the coming weeks. In housing, Mr. Mayor, our service continues to be one of the best run in Kent, if not wider afield. We make these judgments based not only on our own opinion, but on the words of encouragement and support we receive from so many tenants and leaseholders. It is a source of great pride to me that Dartford continues to be leading the way in terms of providing new council houses and social housing, particularly for young people and families. Whilst that activity has not stopped during the pandemic, the recovery ahead gives us an opportunity to do even more to ensure a fair and affordable housing market in the borough. I pay tribute to Councillor David Moat for the work he is committed to with his committee to ensure that housing is a key priority for this council. On the capital programme, Mr. Mayor, the budget provides for a continuation of our successful investments in public spaces and facilities. It provides for the completion of the extraordinary project to restore the Acacia estate to a high heritage quality, and to provide what I believe will be one of the most beautiful natural environments anywhere in the southeast as the River Darrant flows through Central Park. North of Central Park, further projects will deliver more heritage improvements and new riverside paths along the Dartford Creek. The Orchard Theatre will benefit from further investment to the auditorium, and we shall continue to make a number of other investments in worthwhile capital projects across the borough. One of the most significant capital projects ahead will be the creation of the new public space in Dartford High Street and the establishment of a truly attractive shopping environment that is warranted by our town tradition. On our fees and charges and policies, which are included in the budget papers set out the whole range of the council's fees and charges, which have broadly been updated in line with inflation, as is convention. I must explain to members, however, that we continue to make operational decisions in relation to this ongoing national emergency. And there are actually very many examples of the council taking a common sense approach when applying policy. And I would like to give you 3 examples. Members will know, for example, that we've suspended all car parking fees and charges on more than one occasion since the pandemic began. And we continue to take decisions in that regard based upon what is right and helpful for local people, not what reflects the full extent of our powers. The car parking charges have been waived and suspended during the period of lockdown, but now as we see the recovery begin, we are getting reports that actually there is a lack now of short-term car parking space to serve the retail interests of the town. So we will have an announcement to make tomorrow about the change of car parking charges. But again, it's done in a balanced way and in a way which is going to enable us to respond and reflect the way in which this country and this town is emerging out from the pandemic. Another example, Mr. Mayor, is in relation to planning controls involving the erection of marquees, gazebos and outdoor coverings. This council will try to be as helpful as possible to local hospitality businesses who might wish to take advantage of a return to outdoor trade next month. Of course, we must retain the right to intervene where the interest of local neighbours or communities may be negatively affected. But in general terms, we will do what is reasonable to help pubs and restaurants get business underway again by providing suitable outdoor spaces for their patrons. The third example where we have chosen to flex our abilities and our powers has perhaps received rather too much publicity in the last few days, and it relates to the application of burial charges. The council has already laid instructions for these changes to be suspended while the community and bereaved families meet the challenges of this awful health emergency. Mr. Mayor, there is no reason for anyone to campaign for things that the council has already decided to do, but I propose to say no more on that subject. COVID recovery is a hugely important issue, and getting support for our local communities and our local businesses is vital. Once again, I could talk long into the evening about all the measures we've implemented to help local businesses at this difficult time. We have been fast and we've been accurate in processing grants to local businesses, and we have regardless of any political considerations, I think it is hard not to appreciate that the work has been done by central government to ensure help is available. Packages such as the business support grant was solely intended to support the true entrepreneurs, the risk takers, and the business leaders who provide the employment and the economic lifeblood of this town. Both we and the government made perfectly clear that we wanted every penny of business support grant to benefit the right businesses, though the ones who were providing employment, underpinning successful lives, and helping local people. I'm proud of the way businesses have responded to this crisis. Clearly, though, there are some extraordinarily challenging times ahead, particularly for those businesses in the hospitality sector. And today, this council signals the launch of its COVID recovery plan. The government has provided significant funding to us and helpfully made it clear that this time the funds are to be used for mid and long-term recovery projects. It is the right thing to do, Mr. Mayor, and Dartford will apply that funding with creativity, energy and purpose. At our AGM, I propose to create a post dedicated to COVID recovery, and the work we do will be aimed at every community, every neighbourhood, every business and every family in the borough. I will also be inviting members of the opposition to work with us in this task, and I hope they will accept the offer once again to work together. I can, however, announce one particular intervention in our plan to ensure Dartford builds back better after the COVID crisis. Community grants have been at the heart of our success since we first took control of this administration in 2003, and successful grant programs like Salute to Youth, Club Together and the annual community grant have assisted literally hundreds of remarkable local groups, clubs and societies, and they continue to do so to this day. All of those grant funds will remain open in the months and years ahead, fully funded, but I'm pleased to confirm that the General Community Grant Fund, which has been providing up to £45,000 in recent years, is today to be boosted to £90,000. Doubling the value of that community funding is the first decisive step to ensuring that Dartford's recovery from COVID benefits the many and not just the few. It will fuel the recovery of community organisations in every part of the borough, and I'm delighted to launch it today. As I conclude, Mr. Mayor, I come to some changes to structure. Members will know that in the coming weeks, we shall lose the services of a truly remarkable senior officer here at Dartford in Sherry Green. Her retirement, though well deserved, will lead to a significant deficit in our council, and it is hard to put into words the difference she has made, not just to a single organisation or department, but to an entire town and hundreds of thousands of people in its population. Mr. Mayor, budget meetings are not the place to say goodbye to such a trusted and professional colleague, but they are the opportunity for us to confirm the changes of structure which now lie ahead. Many of you will know already that the council is to adopt a leaner and more empowered community management structure to meet the needs and the challenges of our local community. I know that Sarah Martin will continue to provide great leadership and good judgment of this organisation, but now she will be joined by Peter Dosad as the new Director of Housing Public Protection and by Caroline Hicks, who will work on growth and communities. I regret to tell you, members of the council, that in terms of the political leadership, I do intend to remain for a while yet. I will finally make an announcement about membership of the council, which I've been authorised to do, despite some conversations I've had in recent days, swearing people to confidence. Calvin McLean is leaving us. Calvin McLean is leaving us as a councillor because he has one of those sort of jobs that makes it impossible for him to hold any political post. There are certain political restricted posts in certain councils which you cannot hold and continue to be an active participant in local politics. And Calvin, much to his benefit in terms of his career, but to our loss in terms of his skills and abilities, is now occupying one of those jobs, or will be soon. So we say goodbye tonight to Calvin, and I thank him more than I can say for his enormous service, his vitality, his insight, and his great professionalism. Mr. Mayor, that's the end of my presentation on the budget. I'm sorry it was long, but these are complicated issues and these are very unusual days. The pledge I make to the people of Dartford is that this council will continue to do the right thing, continue to show common sense, continue to explore cross-party working where it's possible, continue to offer advice across the parties to try to steer this council forward in a way that the residents want it to. And I commend this budget to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kite. Is that seconded?
Happy to second, and I reserve my ability to discuss it later on in the debate.
Thank you very much. I'll call upon Councillor Sasha Cosine to respond. Would you like to respond?
Time's up.
Unfortunately not.
Well, that was 20 minutes, 19 seconds. So, but I promise you I won't be as long as that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Kite for publishing the budget report in its earliest time ever before the budget GAC meeting. I would also like to thank Councillor Kite and Councillor Butterfield for the cross-party working we have done throughout this pandemic. We would also like to say a big thank you to the officers who have helped us to understand the complexity and help us to navigate through a very detailed and comprehensive report. Our speeches tonight are not based on cheap political points scoring or putting anyone down. The residents' welfare and needs will always be at the heart of what we say in our debates. And so we would like to begin by welcoming the 1% rise that is going to be applied to salary levels within Dartford Borough Council. This is good news for employees, as this last year has been testing and forced us all to work and adapt our lives, which has now become the new norm. Well done to the council staff, it is well deserved. As the official opposition in this council, we do not agree, however, about the decision of any funds that should be taken out of democratic hands of elected representatives and left to individuals to decide where said funds should be allocated without knowledge, understanding and reporting of these transactions to the elected members in this chamber. I know members on the other side will argue that we have scrutiny committee, CAB A, CAB C, CAB B, whereby we can scrutinise and question the actions of the strategic director, director of corporate services and the leader of the council. But here's the thing, the action has already been done. The transaction has already been completed. The horse has already bolted. To us, it cannot be right that these spending decisions can be made without accountability and transparency. Council tax. This is interesting. From Dartford Council's point of view, it's true. They are not raising council tax. For some residents, the rates of universal credit increased due to the government temporarily increasing the amount paid to them due to COVID-19. This has lifted many residents from band 1 to band 2 income, which in turn caused a reduction in their reward. This means they are paying more council tax. That to them is an increase. The council is fully aware of this, but has still proceeded with these measures. On one hand, there is gloating about not raising the council tax, but on the other hand, they are picking the low-bearing fruit and penalising those residents who are already struggling at the moment. This will also mainly impact working families on low incomes already struggling and those parents of children living below the poverty line here in Dartford. Whilst it may be true that from the council's point of view, council tax isn't being raised, the reality is that residents' overall council tax is going to be raised. In real life terms by £84 and 3 pence on top of the £67 that was raised by last year. It was the Tory administration at Kent County Council, which has also members here tonight who sit on Kent County Council, who voted for an increase in rates, which in turn raised council tax overall. Residents who also pay rent to the council will see an increase in CPI +1. The council has chosen to do this. This isn't a directive by the government to say we must do it. This is the council's choice. It may seem like a little increase of £20 to £30 a month, but again, this will affect residents who would already be struggling during the pandemic. So for us, squeezing them for more money at this time just doesn't seem fair. We would also like to note that we are keen to start meeting again in order to move our cross-party climate change initiative forward. £53,000 has been put in reserve. As everyone here will agree, I hope, we want initiatives that are planned, costed and implemented and broken down within the budget report. What we do find surprising in the budget report is that there isn't anything in the budget which demonstrates the additional demand on services from population growth. And how is this budget going to respond to that? We expected that there was going to be underspends in the budget naturally this year because of the pandemic. It hasn't been business as usual, which also meant that the income streams for the council were at a loss. We hope the government's review of business rates provides the right environment to support businesses, as most will be struggling within the current economic climate. Special events, Dartford Festival. Historically, the event used to make a profit, but it now turns a loss under the current administration. There was a loss of 82,000 last year due to payments upfront costs. There doesn't seem to be any contingency plan within the budget that would perhaps look at protection if this situation continues as it is going to into the summer, some kind of insurance. And I appreciate there may not be any kind of insurance that covers that, but it also appears that before this pandemic, there wasn't a robust contingency plan anyway. As it stands, with Dartford Festival not going ahead, another £82,000 will be paid on cancellations. I think we need to stop calling this festival free because it's money being raised by residents who are paying the costs. Fly tipping. It's still plaguing our town. It's still very at high levels. And this was the case before the pandemic. The residents we have spoken to say they are sick of this and they say they see little action. Those determined to litter will do so and do it where they can't be caught. The 50% target of recycling is not specific to individual authorities. It is a national target. And in England, overall, about 47% of the total waste collected is recycled. Unfortunately, in Dartford, we are only achieving 25%. Of course, income from car parks under the budget, income from car parks are under budget. This was the case before the pandemic. As we have continually raised that motorists are abandoning car parks to park on residential streets, causing chaos in the process. This is having a negative impact. We do welcome the increase of the one extra parking enforcement officer to be deployed in Swanscombe. It is something we have been pushing for since we were elected. It was Labour and Cooperative who highlighted and continues to fight for this issue. We all know that this doesn't go far enough to prevent dangerous parking across Dartford, and hope with the amount of dangerous parking across the town, they would perhaps look at increasing the number of parking officers, because the addition of one officer still won't touch the sides. But nonetheless, we are grateful and we do welcome it. We are taken back though, however, by the fact that funds are being allocated from grants towards Brexit. Dartford needing more parking officers isn't because of Brexit, but I have said this before, it's more to do with dangerous parking. Again, we are puzzled that there are no costing breakdowns for the initiatives we have already agreed. Why is it not in the budget? For example, the trees planted in Hesketh Park. This one item alone could have been listed within the budget with a cost breakdown. Historically, the new homes bonus isn't necessarily spent on new homes. We have also seen this money be stored in reserves or allocated elsewhere. Dartford currently has 965 residents who are bidding for properties. And so there is the proof that we need this budget to be set aside to actually pay for the building of new homes in Dartford. All we see at the moment is private companies building in our area. We are glad to hear that leadership of the council isn't going to be increasing the burial charges. I think it's fair to say that the council aren't going to be financially overcoming in this budget or in the next, due to the pandemic next year. And I'm happy to stand corrected if I'm wrong. I've heard the leaders talking about the council's obligations to set out fees and charges, which is fine, but this budget has clearly been set out and it intends to increase burial charges. As the administration in charge, they cannot hide behind the council officers and not take responsibility for this. Last year, the budget was set before the pandemic arrived in England. The council quite rightly halted parking charges because of the pandemic. This time, the administration in charge was happy for burial charges to be increased whilst we're still in the pandemic. We had a meeting in December where the administration briefed me on their intentions of the budget. Burial charges wasn't part of that discussion which took place. And in fact, on confirmation from the senior officers, I've confirmed that they didn't speak about this until last Monday. So what's really going on here? Either the administration in charge has slipped up, made a mistake, and are trying to correct that by putting forward and saying that they're in effect amending their own budget, or they've seen that this has panned out in other areas where Conservative administrations have raised burial charges, and now they're backtracking. A U-turn. This amendment is like a U-turn. Either way, I think there should be an apology. If the intention wasn't to implement an increase, then it wouldn't have been in the budget in the first place. We accept a mistake has been made. We believe an apology is in order. I have seen letters which have gone out to residents from the council saying that their rent will be increased. Is it normal practice for the council to send out such a letter before it has been voted on? We are here tonight to vote on the budget, but it appears actions have already been taken before the budget is voted on. This is somewhat concerning. Finally, I want to end on a more positive note, and I thank the Mayor for contacting me before this meeting tonight to explain his reasons to why we couldn't put forward, as it is not in direct relation to tonight's budget. We was going to put forward a recommendation to this meeting requesting that we give every staff member of Dartford Borough Council an extra day's leave this year to take at their discretion, to be known as a well-being day. We strongly believe in this motion and we will put it before members at our next GAC meeting. We hope that all members will be in support of this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll call Councillor Butler. Hold on, I'm echoing back here. Can anybody indicate if they can hear me? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Butterfield, would you like to respond?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I certainly would like to respond. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment on this item. As Councillor Kite said right at the very beginning when he presented it, we've had the opportunity across the parties to work on this together, to look at every aspect we could and to make a balanced decision to help the process, which is a very hard one, isn't it, really? We acknowledge that it's been a very, very difficult time to set any budget, particularly through a pandemic. And bearing in mind that we've lost our senior officer, Graham, which was a great shame. So there's been a reorganisation. There's been a lot to fit into something quite complex. And from our perspective, we believe that this has all been acknowledged, worked hard upon, and we're delighted that we can actually shine a bit of a beacon of light during a very dark time, because this budget shows more positives than negatives. There's always going to be some negatives in budgets because it's not easy to please everybody. But as a group, we totally acknowledge and respect the decisions of the professionals behind the scenes that have done an enormous amount of work. And we endorse and support this budget, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Is there any other member that would like to speak? And I will be absolutely savage on this 3 minutes, so be warned. Andy Lloyd, sorry, Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we started off, or my leader started off with lots of complimentary words about how this year we have worked together more than any other year across party, and I do believe actually those first remarks back from the leader of the opposition party and Councillor Butterfield reflected that we have worked together and we've come to something where I believe we've helped Dartford get through the pandemic, and we've helped the council get through the pandemic. There are lots of risks ahead, and now is not the time to start worrying about the budgetary implications to those. Today is the day that we carry on supporting Dartford. And whilst other councils may well have put their council tax up, some of those Conservative councils, which I note you make, that's not the good reason for us to follow suit. We didn't need to. and so we haven't. Now that might be tough in the future, but I think it's the right thing if we can do our bit to help the residents. But I'd like to address a couple of the little issues that cropped up. First one was about assisting residents and this rise in the amount that people pay for their social housing. It is a government allowance, which lets us try to now get back to a rental income which is fairer to the account, housing revenue account, should we say. And the rise of 1% plus CPI would, on the top of it, seem to be, well, it is above inflation, indeed. But let's just put things into context. The average price weekly rent for one of our council houses for a 3-bedroomed property in Dartford is £113 a week. This is not a king's ransom, and it is a very small number compared to a domestic rent, private rent, which many of us around the table here will be paying. And so the rise obviously isn't that massive. And I think what's more important than that is we have a safety net for residents that are in receipt of housing benefit and universal credit, which is of course where the government pays for them. So whilst we put the rent up, all we do is collect that money from the government. Now, you know, you might think there's just a few of those, but there's not. It's 65% of our rent payers actually don't pay their rent. That's paid for out of various government support schemes. So what would have happened if we had not put it up? The housing revenue account, of which has some pressures on it, which I'll explain in a few seconds, would have been short of government cash to meet those pressures. This year, we need to make loan reductions of £9.5 million, including a lump sum of £5 million. We've known about this for a lot of years. We're finally sort of buying ourselves out of the negative subsidy thing, which happened, oh God, I've lost count of the years. I think it was about 10 years ago now, or 8 years ago. And so with that, a £9.5 million reduction, we will, into the housing revenue account next year, have £2.25 million. Oh, sorry, no, that's a lie. £250,000 less interest to pay on those loans. So what that means is that money can go towards housing.
Councillor Lloyd, I must tell you your 3 minutes is up.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Finish.
Can I just finish by saying the new homes bonus is not for building new homes. It's just a payment for supporting the people which come into new homes.
Talking over me.
Thank you very much, sir.
Give you some extra time because you're having an explanation as to why it's done rather than using it for a 3-minute debate. So if you wish to continue, please do.
I will. I was trying to follow the spirit of today, which is not to sort of be, you know, in your face. I was just trying to help people understand what things are there for. The new homes bonus, we used to get a payment of just over £1,000 for every new home that was built in Dartford, and we kept it for 4 years. That's being eliminated, but we've actually put that money into reserve so we can pay for the things that we started paying for with that money, which is about delivering service. So we will draw that, and you'll see it on the medium-term plan. And finally, on the burial charges, lots of old stuff going around here, but if you actually look on the 250 pages of no detail about the budget, which is in front of us, I think it's on page number, let me find it, 69, you will see that the income from cemeteries and burials is not planned to go up this year. See, that wasn't a last minute thought. That obviously must have been something which went into pre-prepared papers. Well ahead of the time and well ahead of any local campaigning. I don't want to make a big political thing of it, but honestly, if someone had asked, we would have just told you. I'm going to finish there because, sorry, I've overrun. Rolls-Royce, well old and gone on forever. So I'll pass back to everybody else. Thank you.
Councillor McLean, I believe it's your turn now, even if you are turning your back on me and leaving us, but I'm going to let you have a go anyway. Go on.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And thank you to the leader for his kind comments. And this is my last budget. It's my 6th budget, but last one. I will miss it. I'll even miss members of the opposition. I can't wish you well politically, but I do wish you all and your families well moving forward. As I've said, it's my 6th budget, and 6 times I'm going to say pretty much the same thing in my allotted time. And that is slightly different this time round. There's been a bit more conciliation, but it's the same thing. Labour criticising, but not putting anything forward. Where are the amendments? Where are the suggestions? It's meant to be collaborative. You're meant to be an opposition who are, a credible opposition that the people of Dartford may try and vote for the next time. And yet again, you just constantly put yourselves forward as completely unfit to run any council. I just want to pick up a couple of points. This has come up before, and former Councillor Hawkes picked this point up about the Dartford Festival, how it's costing money. This is an event that the council put on for people of Dartford. It's not losing money. It costs us money to put it on. It's their money, and rightfully we invest it in their event, and they don't have to pay again. There are some councils that will use council tax money to create an event and then charge people to go to it. We don't do that. It's very family orientated, and everybody here, I'm sure, has enjoyed it before in the past. So let's just get this clear. It's not losing money. We're using their money in order to put on an event for them. My money, your money, council tax money. On fly tipping, I just want to say very quickly, I know a little bit about this. We have the most effective environmental enforcement team in the county. They get some remarkable results, and there's never, ever any recognition for that. Fly tipping is a scourge. I live in a rural area, and it is a scourge, and officers will know, Sherry Green will certainly know, that I kick up a stink about it. I think it's right as council to kick up a stink about it, but there's nothing in this budget that's going to make fly tipping any worse. We've always prioritised it, and and rightfully so. Lastly, on the burial charges, burial charge gate, I'm going to call it. It's a bit of a scandal, isn't it? And I think this is a case of confirmation bias from the Labour Party. They believed something, they really believed it, they didn't read the paperwork again, and actually, as Councillor Lloyd has pointed out, there was never to be seen any increase in the income, so why on earth would we be putting the charges up? It's been confirmed again, and you still won't let it go. But the fact of the matter is, the leaders explained it, you either got to build a bridge and get over it. It's as simple as that. We're not putting charges up, it was never intended, and I would say to all my colleagues around the table for the last time, please vote for this budget. It's an excellent budget. We're one of very few councils that are putting up council tax yet again, one of very few councils that find themselves in tens of millions of pounds worth of debt because of COVID. This is a really good budget. It recognises everything. It recognises our hard-working staff, and I encourage you to vote for it. Thank you and goodbye.
Anyone else? Councillor Hammock? Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, I do apologise, Mr. Mayor. I thought you were all lip readers. I would just like to say that I've sat on the Treasury Management Panel for over 20 years now, under both leaderships of Conservative and Labour. The advice we have received from our external advisors, Treasury advisors, has always been excellent, and we have followed it. This year, because of the circumstances around the pandemic and others, our advisors urged the officers and members to set a prudent budget. I would like to congratulate our officers and our senior members. They have set exactly what our Treasury advisors urged, a prudent budget, and therefore I not only support it, I would urge every other member to also support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor David Moat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would tend to agree with Councillor Gosai in the fact there is a lot of houses being built in Dartford. A lot of people seem to want to live in Dartford, so he must be doing something right in Dartford for them to want to come here. But what he seems to have forgotten is the fact that we've built something like 86 homes for social rent over the last 2 or 3 years, and there's about another 32 actually in the pipeline now. There is a lot of work and a lot of building going on in Swanscombe at the moment. It's all council housing, and it will be allocated for local people in Swanscombe. I thank Councillor Lloyd for clarifying the situation with the new homes bonus. It can be confusing, but it's not there to build houses. It is to support the communities that we are building the houses into. That's it. It is a confusion, but we are building more houses, and I think we've been overtaken slightly by a couple of other boroughs, boo hiss, but we are building more social houses than most other boroughs in this county, and in fact probably in the country. So I think that's probably a misdemeanor to suggest that we're not doing enough for people who want to live in Dartford. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Gaskin, I believe you've had your hand up for some time and nobody's picked you up. Is that right? There's a little message come up on my screen.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Yes, further to what Councillor Moe just said about building new houses, and I noticed the leader of the council said earlier that building homes for families is his priority. And I also note that we currently have got nearly 1,000 families waiting for a home, and I understand the waiting time can be up to 10 years. So for this reason, I'm rather surprised, considering the pressure and on the housing stock, and the fact that Dartford is one of the fastest growing areas in Kent, with one of its youngest populations, which means the pressures are only going to increase. So that's why I'm quite surprised. I'm not sure, maybe this could be explained, why the budget for the new homes has been cut by nearly a third. I understand the number of the homes that have been built, but the budget appears to be reduced. Can I perhaps have some explanation why is it less this year than it was previously? And yes, I understand, well, we can get used to the numbers on the paper look just numbers, but these are not numbers. These are people, these are families. This means family of 5 having to live in 1-bedroom flat. This means teenage girls sharing rooms with boys, with their brothers. So I would like to invite the leader of the council perhaps to be more active in supporting the housing staff, the housing department, in allocating more money rather than putting it into reserve, putting into more homes for the families of Dartford, because as it was earlier said, this money is not our own money. This is residents' money. This is taxpayers' money, and they want some kind of provision for them on top of everything else that council provides. The housing is the most basic needs, the human rights. So can I perhaps have a sort of explanation of the reduction in the budget for the new homes? Thank you, Chair.
I can't see him for the minute. Councillor Davis, are you there? Oh, he's not on my screen. Councillor Davis?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perfect. Through you, I'd like to ask that the leader and the cabinet look to expedite one of the capital expenditure items, which is the expansion of the Fairfield swimming pool car park. I think this would be a very popular move. In normal times, the swimming pool is very greatly used and the car park is not big enough. And I note in the report that it's not being progressed because the swimming pool is closed, but to me it's the ideal time to have expanded it for when the swimming pool reopens, hopefully in April. I'd just like to support that being expedited. Thank you.
Does any other member have anything to say? Oh, I see Councillor Graham, please share. Yeah, Councillor Graham, would you, I can't see you on my screen, but I see I've got a note flashed up here.
I should have just appeared. Got me?
No.
Can you hear me and I'll speak?
Yeah, just go ahead and speak.
Good, good. Thank you, Chair. Lovely to have your attention. The thing I would like to raise tonight is with regards to Planet Dartford. Obviously, when we did the motion that was supported by all members of the chamber on the climate emergency, we were in a very different place to the place we find ourselves in today. So I'm not bringing criticism that we haven't been able to make the progress that we would all have liked. However, while I welcome things like extra growth of trees and all of that kind of thing, I'd like to see next year us place some focus on some more strategic methods to reduce the pollution in the town, which I believe is catastrophic. And I do believe that some of our high COVID rate in Kent is probably due to, or our high hospitalisation rates, I should say, is probably due to the number of people with chest-related problems caused by the pollution. So I would like to see next year us focus on things such as solar panels, things that reduce pollution directly, in addition to the kind of methods we've taken today. And I hope that will be considered as we move forward.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that I can see, can't see? I have.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hammond is trying to draw your attention.
Councillor Hammond, you've already spoken once. Sorry.
It was merely a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
You're David Hammock. I've got it.
I wasn't going to make a statement. I was going to clarify something that somebody referred to earlier.
Quickly.
It was stated earlier, why can't we put money into housing instead of into reserves? I'd just like to point out to everybody that the housing revenue account is a ring-fenced budget and cannot be, you cannot move anything from capital reserves into housing. It's a closed system.
Anybody else that I've missed? Councillor Honeysett, did I see you raising your hand earlier? All right, keep in your pockets. Right, that's it. No other members? I call upon Councillor Kite to sum up on the debate on the budget. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, well, I'll try to rattle through them. Some of them are frankly just repetition of things from past years. The IIR issue and transparency, we've already tried to explain that. The council, during the course of its year, spends an awful lot of money on grants, on activities and events. I'm afraid the way the council budget process works is that we declare our intention to spend money. And in this case, we've declared our intention to spend money on a number of projects via the IIR. And that's where the accountability rests. And in terms of the decisions we've made, they are absolutely subject to the scrutiny of members. And so when he talks about a failure of democracy, I'm afraid it's really an exaggerated and claim. He is the chairman of scrutiny and he has the opportunity to raise these issues. And I quite understand that he would say, well, they've already spent it then. But is he telling me that the only reason he doesn't raise these issues is because they've already happened? He doesn't believe in the power of his committee to actually scrutinise us and perhaps embarrass us for something that we've spent that he thinks we shouldn't have done. I'm afraid it just doesn't hold water, and the accountability he looks for is here. It's in this budget. With regard to council tax, yes, well, I myself was the first to concede that actually there are other councils and other agencies like the fire, like police, and like parish councils even, who add extra money to this bill. But the point is, and I haven't heard him once, or any other member of the Labour group say tonight, that well done for Dartford to actually not putting up its tax. It's not a reason for us to do it. And if he feels that it's, if he feels that the whole package of tax raises is bad, what does he have to say to his own comrades and colleagues in Gravesham and Swale, who have done exactly the same and put council tax up? He really can't have it both ways. We are here representing Dartford residents at Dartford Council, and I believe we've done the right thing by freezing council tax. And actually, I believe the residents know that and appreciate it. With regard to rent increases, well, I think Councillor Lloyd has made that absolutely clear. If we were to forego a rent increase, which is designed to restabilise and balance out our rents over a period of years, as per government instructions, then actually what would happen is we would lose a huge amount of government revenue. That money that would come directly out of the money used to spend on and support the housing service. So he would have to tell us where he wants to not spend money on the housing service if he doesn't want those rents to go up. Festival. Well, honestly, the one thing that I've taken away from tonight is that there is a simple failure to understand the finances of councils and how they work. I think Councillor McLean put it very well. This is a council spending taxpayers' own money on an event to be enjoyed by taxpayers. Now, if you really want, I mean, what I'm taking away from it tonight is that if the council were in Labour hands, there would be a number of possible scenarios with regard to Festival. If it didn't make a profit, it would be cut. or cancelled. And the way to make a profit is to effectively charge residents for attending. So there has to be, I mean, I will explore this with him in meetings going forward as to what he actually wants us to do about the festival. But it sounds to me that there are no other options unless there is some extraordinary funding out there which is prepared to prop up a festival and put money into a festival with no particular benefit. He might be able to point me to that. But actually, I think what he has announced tonight, whether he thinks he has or not, is effectively that under a Labour council, if there ever were to be one, the festival would either be cut, cancelled or paid for and charged through admittance. And he needs to clarify that. With regard to New Homes Bonus, well, I have to say I've calmed down a little bit now from when he first said it. We do have a responsibility here to work with colleagues and to explain things to colleagues. But honestly, because the words new homes are in the title of New Homes Bonus, I'm afraid it doesn't mean that we spend it on new homes. The money from New Homes Bonus is derived from new homes. And so he's answered one of his other own questions, which was that what's happening with regard to growth and how we are accounting within our finances for growth. And the answer is the New Homes Bonus is part of the reflection of that. As the council community grows, then the New Homes Bonus increases. Now, one of the problems we have looking forward is we're never sure whether New Homes Bonus is effectively embedded in our budget. We have to again account for it very prudently, but New Homes Bonus, I can tell him, it's not, because it says New Homes Bonus, it doesn't mean we spend it on new homes. It's just the reverse. The money derives from new homes. Parking officers. Well, yes, it's true. Last year, Dartford Labour Party suggested that we should have 10 new parking officers. Well, that would have worked out really well, wouldn't it, in the year that's just gone by? Now, I know that no one could foresee what was happening, but again, it's part of this failure of prudency. We introduce parking officers when we introduce new parking regulations to make sure that the work that they have is matched to the regulations they can enforce. I know members opposite like us to feel that we can just enforce anything they don't agree with. I'm afraid the world and the law doesn't work that way. So we have now put more money into the provision of local schemes, and that will benefit members, Labour, Conservative and Independent, all over the place who want those schemes. And in return, we now have a growing number of council parking officers to enforce them. To put the officers in without the workload and the regulations being in place is simply throwing the money away. Burial charges. Well, I'm not going to call it burial gate because actually I think this is a sensitive issue, and actually I feel that my obligation here is to ensure people aren't scared by it. Let me just say that even I mean, I can explain to Councillor Gosign how these things work, and that you don't actually lay the papers down too early before a budget meeting, which explains why last week was when certain operational matters were laid before. But let's take it, what he says, as being gospel, that actually he now knows that the letter to deal with this was put in last Monday, that the operational decision to not to charge for burials or burial increases was put in last Monday. How does that explain that when I told him that on Friday night, and I told Councillor Green that on Friday night, that on Saturday morning they continued to promote their petition? How is that possible to be explained? Now he knows it's true that actually the council had already resolved not to impose burial charges, and I told him exactly that. He now knows exactly. And when he talked over the weekend, or his colleagues talked over the weekend about we shouldn't drag officers into it, the whole reason of inviting him to explain or to seek an explanation from officers was because I don't expect him to trust me necessarily. I hope he does, and I hope we're friends, and I hope he knows I wouldn't ever mislead him. But in this sort of situation, he might want independent confirmation that we had done something that we said we'd done. And so I invited him to speak to officers. And now he's found out that we spoke the truth, that actually burial charges were not going to feature tonight as an applied charge in this budget. And when I told him that, the petition still went ahead. And I think there's some concerns there. And I don't actually levy the charge against Councillor Gosign, because I think Councillor Gosign is a decent chap, and I think he doesn't want to necessarily embark on many of these expeditions that some of his colleagues do. But I do think there's a lesson here that when we say something, or a little bit of research or a question, might actually stop worrying people out there in the community. Can I carry on? Members happy for me to carry on?
Yes.
I'm well over halfway through, I promise.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Councillor Gaskin talks about the housing queue and social housing and our commitment to it, and a specific question about the budget for it. And let's answer the budget question first. First of all, as others have explained, this is a ring-fence fund, and what we do is we spend money that derives from the sale of council homes. And what we've done is we've worked, and if she cares to look back at some cabinet reports, she will see exactly how we've done that, and exactly how we've matched spending to that to ensure we don't have to return any money to government. The truth is that if you take money from the fund for right to buy and you don't spend it, it goes back to government. So we spend every penny we can. And what that means is that budget goes up and down. And what she's referring to in terms of a loss or a reduction this year is simply the conclusion of that building phase. So you don't build houses in the same phase as the money comes in. You build houses according to a building plan. So a lot of upfront costs, a lot of payments to builders, a lot of payments for design and architecture, and then they gradually tail off as the work is completed. And so that's what she's seeing. She's not seeing a reduction in budget. She is seeing stage payments over a number of years. With regard to the housing queue and the numbers of people on housing, again, this hasn't been a particularly competitive evening, so I don't want to wind everybody up. But can I just say, one of the ways you solve a housing crisis is to build houses. And I just ask the question, what possible contribution to a rising housing number would 40 years during which a Labour administration was in control of this council for about 70% of it, over that period, not a single council house was built. Not a single council house was built. Now, if you're worried about people on the housing queue, and I am, please explain to me how that possibly helped that there was not a single council house built for nearly 40 years in this borough until we came along and started building. It's a surprise to me, actually, that a Conservative council is building houses in this quantity. But I tell you, I've been on a journey where I've seen the huge difference it makes to people to build them, to have them provided for them. I've seen the huge difference it makes for young people to know they've got their own key and their own lock and their own domain from which to build a great life. I'm just sad that for 40 years before we came along, nobody was on that journey with us and no houses were built in Dartford.
Mr. Mayor,
with regard to,
can I make a point of clarification, please, Mr. Mayor?
Of course, Mr. Hammond, yeah, please.
It's not your decision,
Councillor, if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor. Yep. Councillor Kite, I think that's not correct, this 40 years business. We had a lot of sheltered accommodation built in the 80s and well within the 40-year period that you're talking about. We decided that there was lots of people in accommodation who were sitting on their own. So we actually built a number of sheltered accommodations. That was a Labour council that did that. We also, unfortunately, it was government policy. Both governments did the same thing. We had to direct all our social housing to being built by housing associations. So the funding went from councils, unfortunately, to housing associations, but social housing was built and we as a council used to give grants for doing that. So it's not strictly true, Councillor, what you're saying. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't usurping you, Mr. Mayor. It's just the fact that the interruption would be to me, so that's why I said I was happy. But let me just quickly, then, very quickly address that issue. I don't think when Councillor Gaskin talks to me about the young people and the families living in a council accommodation and needing council accommodation, she's actually talking about building sheltered housing, is she? Sheltered housing has a very specific client base, and it doesn't actually impact the housing queue at all. So I don't think that's a very valid contribution. However, I will press on. With regard to Councillor Davis and the Fairfield car park, I absolutely understand where he's coming from and we will revisit it. I think it's not so much the fact that the decision was taken because Fairfield was closed. It was because at one point we weren't entirely sure what the implication for centres like Fairfield and swimming and fitness would be. And actually there may be a drop-off in business generally. There may be a change in the way people were using it. So, but I absolutely understand and we will revisit that. It's a real scourge on the area that the Fairfield renovation has been so successful and again, not always universally supported in this chamber, so successful that actually the numbers of people who want to use the centre is now ballooning. And I do want to make sure that local residents are not impacted by that. So we will absolutely keep our eye on that work. And if the operators of Fairfield tell us that the car park is necessary, then we will absolutely commit to doing that. With regard to Councillor Grian, yeah, well, I get that. I mean, we must be careful not to keep moving and shifting our policies and ideals. I remember that I think a year ago, trees were exactly what she and others were talking about, and there was a huge drive to build to grow trees, and that's what we're doing. And we continue, and we'll revisit a lot of the bigger tree projects. I mean, I don't think the community orchards at Hesketh and Alamein Gardens are anything like the answer, but they're part of the answer, and perhaps they will show the way for us. With regard to solar panels, forgive me, I don't know whether I didn't explicitly refer to all the projects, and she may have missed it when I mentioned it, but I did say that we also have budgets available for the environmental improvements of private and public properties in Dartford, and that does indeed involve alternative technologies, greener technologies, including solar panels. So the thing she's asking for is exactly what we're already doing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Members, as I explained earlier, it is a requirement that all decisions taken by the council at their budget meeting must be by way of a recorded vote. I will therefore ask members to indicate whether the recommendations can be voted for en bloc or whether any member wishes to have a separate vote on any particular recommendation. I take it we're going to vote en bloc then?
Happy to do so, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, agreed.
Oh, it's not.
Agreed.
Yep. Right. The Strategic Director Internal Services will conduct a recorded vote accordingly. Can I ask the Director to do that, please?
Yes, thank you. Members, I'll call out each of your name. If you can please say whether you're for, abstaining or against the budget. Councillor Allen.
For.
Barham. Councillor Barham.
For.
Ben Musa.
Against.
Brown.
For.
Burrell. Councillor Burrell.
Councillor Burrell with us?
I don't think Councillor Burrell is present.
Okay. Butler Roll.
For.
Butterfield.
For.
Canham.
For.
Cutler.
For.
Davies.
For.
Eadie. Councillor Eadie present?
I'm sure I've seen her here.
She is. She's on mute.
She's on mute.
You're on mute.
Can you
Me.
Councillor Eadie?
Against.
Garden? Councillor Garden?
For.
Gaskin?
Against.
Councillor Sasha Gosine?
Against.
Councillor Argosine?
Against.
Grian?
Against.
Hammock?
For.
Harman? Councillor Harman?
Councillor Harman with us?
I'm just having a quick look.
I can't see her.
I don't think he's present.
No, he's
Okay.
not present.
Honeysett?
For.
Jones? Councillor Jones?
Yeah.
Sorry, against.
Kite?
For.
Lloyd?
Or.
Councillor Maddison?
Against.
McLean?
For.
Moat?
For.
Nicklin?
For.
Oakley Dow?
Against.
Oguntope,
Against.
Oliver,
For.
Ozog,
She is, yeah.
Councillor Ozog,
Can you?
For.
Right.
Peters,
For.
E Reynolds,
4.
L Reynolds,
4.
Sandhu,
4.
Shipham,
4.
Story, Councillor Story,
Councillor Story. She's here somewhere.
I don't think she can come off mute.
Councillor Story, you're muted. Can you unmute?
Yes.
Oh.
Councillor Swinard,
4.
Thurlow,
4.
Wells,
4.
Deputy Mayor,
4.
and Mayor.
4.
Thank you.
10 against.
Good. 10 against and 29 for. Is that what you've got, Alan?
29-10, yep.
Yeah. So the budget's been carried. 29 votes to 10. Thank you.
That's the end of the meeting. So the meeting. Thank you to everybody for attending. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Pleasure for you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.